welcome everyone. There's kind of I think people will kind of log on as we proceed in here. I don't see any guests. There's Jude, or it could be Judy, I'm not sure, but I don't see. Carl sent me a list of possible people that were going to join us as guests, but I don't see them showing up quite yet. So we'll give them some time. But just very briefly, I just want to make an announcement that in 2 weeks, on June the 23rd, we're going to have our competition meeting, and the subject is still life. But as we've gone for at least a year, if people don't have a still life image and they want to enter in any other topic, that's acceptable. The judge on that is going to be Cheryl Opperman. I believe Cheryl is from Lakewood. The last, or the final Wednesday of the month on June 30th, is we have a mentoring program scheduled, and Carl will send out more information about that probably in a couple of weeks as we get closer to that date. So tonight I would like to welcome back Erik Holladay-McCann. Sorry for getting that confused, but Erik did a great presentation to us back in November on HDR and Lightroom and luminosity masks in Photoshop. And so he's going to be doing a presentation for us tonight on basically, portrait retouching. He does a lot of work on his business on shooting seniors and headshots. And if I can find this, weddings. I'm sure that weddings are a very, very big component of your business, Erik. So yeah. So, and I think you're going to do a little bit of work on that retouching of portraits, frequency separation, and maybe get into a little bit of processing. So I'll turn the meeting over to you, Erik, and welcome. I appreciate you coming back and presenting to our club as well. And if you want to have anything to say about, what you're doing, if you have ebooks to sell, or if you're hosting workshops, or, please, feel free to do that. So
great.
At this point, I think I'll turn the meeting over to you. Thank you very much, Erik.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. Yeah. Welcome back to one more of my workshops about a very complicated thing that basically technology caught up with me and now is very easy in Photoshop. So what I'm going to kind of start doing is I've used frequency separation, and it started out as a high-end fashion retouching technique, and it's basically kind of trickled down into everyday portraiture. And I think it's a really good way of controlling different things in a portrait to really smooth out skin without taking away texture, and then to really even out color without like making it look like wax and stuff like that. So because filters tend to do that, you got to manipulate filters, and this I think is a way where you have a lot more control. So so what I'm going to do is we'll start out with my tried and true frequency separation that I've been doing for a long time, and then I will show you the new Photoshop just released a neural filter, I'd say 4 or 5 months ago, I think it was, does a really interesting job. And once I explain frequency separation, then I can show you that filter and explain what it's doing, and you'll understand it a little bit better. So it's just, I always think knowledge is power. So understanding what it's doing and why it's doing it and how it's doing it gives you much more power on actually controlling the filter. So let me share my screen here. So I did a little portrait here. Everybody see that? That's looking good. And so just to shorten this out, I could sit here and really go into the guts of frequency separation, but truthfully, somebody's done all the math and everything for me. So there's a lot of frequency separation actions like out there. You can find them all over the place. They basically do the same thing. And what they do is they make layers. And I'm just going to hit this up here. So this is my frequency separation action. And I have an 8-bit and a 16-bit one. And I got mine from Aaron Nace, and he's a great teacher. There's many other portrait artists out there and fashion. I think Lindsay Adler has a frequency separation action. They all do the same thing. But I have an 8-bit and a 16-bit one, and that always determines which one I'm using is what I'm using, what kind of file I'm using. So right now I'm in an 8-bit. This is an older camera, so this is an 8-bit file. To find that out is you go up to image and then mode, and you'll see which one is selected here. So this is an 8-bit. So I'm just going to hit 8-bit, and it's going to give me some prompts. So what it does first is it gives you a Gaussian blur for your low frequency layer. And you want to set this so there's no texture. You can't see any texture at all on your subject. So you just kind of, and there's no set number for this, you guys. You just have to kind of fiddle with each one is unique to itself. So I get it up there in the 20s, and I just keep going back and forth until I can't see any texture at all. So that looks about good for me. And then you hit OK. And then it gives me this, and I'm just going to pop through that because I'm going to explain that. So then over here in this folder over on the layers, now this is probably pretty small for everybody. It's over here. I have a high frequency and HF layer and a low frequency LF layer. Let me shift this over. So the high frequency is your texture layer. And the great thing about frequency separation is what it does is it separates your texture and your colors. So I can work on them separately. And sometimes what happens is when you use a smoothing filter, it does both. It works on texture and so then that's why it kind of turns like waxy and looks weird, and like there's no gradation in the shadows with the light from, like, Ben has like a light spot on the front of his forehead, and then it gradiates over into a darker spot. Like if I use a filter, it would just even that completely straight out because it's and also it would smooth it out because it's smoothing it. So it would get rid of all my shadows, and then it would smooth the skin out. So what frequency separation does is it separates those two so you can work on them separately at alone. So what that does, and the best way I can kind of show you is I can just grab the layer. So I have it on the high frequency, the HF layer, and I'm just going to grab it, and you can see how there's still color underneath there, and all I'm having is my layer is all the texture that's on the layer. So that's all I'm working on when I'm working on this layer. So let me set that back up. And then if you do the same thing with the other one and you grab it, there's all the color information. So then I'm only working on the color information with this layer. And this comes in handy with frequency separation. And also, Dave, if you guys want to type questions into the chat, and if somebody can keep an eye on that, that would be awesome. I have it up, but I don't always pay attention to it. So that would be great. Or I can stop in about 10 minutes and we can do some questions because this is going to be a lot. So the way I work in frequency separation is I always work by getting rid of blemishes first. Anything like acne, and like I don't want to call underbags, crow's feet and stuff like that blemishes, but they are, and we all have them. So I select my low frequency, my high frequency, my texture layer. Okay. So and then I actually use with this texture layer is I use the stamp tool. So, and the shortcut to the stamp tool is just hitting S. And for this, when you're only on this layer, for this particular layer, you want to make sure that you have the sample up here at the top set to current layer. Sometimes your Photoshop defaults to current and below, or all layers. You don't want that. Okay. So you want just the current layer that you're working on. So you only want your texture layer being affected. And then I use my stamp tool. And so I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just doing Command plus and minus for my zoom. And I just zoom in on where I'm going to work. And I have my stamp tool. And then what you're also going to use a lot of is your brush size, which is the bracket. So you can set up some shortcuts. I don't particularly have this computer set up. Sometimes you can hold Shift or Option and move the size. I have mine connected to Zoom. So I, for some reason, still love using the bracket tools. It just is faster for me for some weird reason. So what you do on this is I'm only going to select the textures that I like. So like right here, I want to be close to a texture. I'm going to affect this where he has a little scar and some acne right there. I'm only going to, so I want a texture that's similar to the skin around it. So I'm just going to hold my Option key down, get my little target, and then I'm going to click once and let up on that. So what that's doing is it's selecting that texture that it's going to sample from. And then I'm going to come over. Oh, the one thing also that I almost forgot is you want your flow really low. You want to be subtle on this. You don't want to be too quickly and stuff like that. For this, I'll be even lower on my color one. But for this, I usually do 20 to 40%, just because I don't want to do 100%. I want to gradually, I want to even this out a little bit. So I'm going to get my target, click it once, and then I'm going to go work on the section that I'm just kind of, and flow controls, so you go over it and over it and over it, and then you have 40%. So, or 100%, sorry. So every time you click and drag, that's 40%. And then if you go over it again, it's 80%, et cetera, and then 100%. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm selecting constantly. So I'm always trying to, because you don't, if you just use one selection point, it's all going to look completely like wrong. Skin's not perfect. So you'd want different textures in this area, and you want to be pretty close to where it is. So I'm just kind of going and finding different, see how the colors are different there a little bit. So I want to make sure I keep that kind of even. And I do it from the other side too, just to bring it together. I almost kind of like fold it in on itself. And just kind of even it out and get rid of some ridges. Anything that's going to draw the eye, because we're going to even out the color with the other frequency separation. So on this spot, see where it's in the specular highlight, I want to make sure that specular highlight just continues. I don't want to like, because if I did, so I'll go back. So we'll bring that back. So you see how that's there. If I came over here and did this, then I have that weird spot there. So I actually want to make sure I'm conscious of where the light is too. So I want to make sure that that specular highlight down the center of his head continues, because it's going to look very crazy. So this, I'm only going to do a little bit of this, but like you just want to even out textures and get rid of blemishes. In highlights, you can get rid of, like, you can do color on here, but sometimes I actually use the texture, just to get rid of that highlight a little bit. Sometimes it's good to keep it there. Sometimes it's bad. It's all up to you. The other thing that I do is I look for like hairs and flakes, because this layer is really good to get rid of that stuff too. Like here's a hair right here. So I just select right next to it, get my target, hold Option, get my target, click, and then I just go right down it and see how there's a, I'm gonna click again here because there's a color change there. So I want to make sure that continues. And then click here and then just continue painting that hair right out of there. And yes, this, you know, our other tools will work really well, but this actually puts the texture of the skin underneath where I'm going. If you use those healing tools, sometimes it smooths out weirdly, or like samples in a weird texture of skin and puts it over the other. So this is just more control. It's doing the same thing. I just have more control. Oh, what did I change? There we go. Current layer. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that. So, because you can continue, you can get really, like there's weird hairs over here on his eye that you can kind of even out. It caught the light weird, and I just want to get rid of those. I could, you know, really get rid of some of this and even it out. You know, for the closer you zoom in, guys, the more you find. So it's always good, to keep a pretty distant like version of this, because otherwise you're just going to get in here and start overworking yourself. I even use it to like something like this. See how he has like a little gap in his so I'm just going to bring that texture of the hair back over that gap just to fill it in a little bit. So it looks, I'm getting some bad textures in there. That's the thing, is I just Command Z and go back and start all over again if I get the wrong stuff. So there. So what I'll do is I'll turn the layer off. So that's before. Oops, excuse me. There's before. There's after. I'm just getting rid of some of the blemishes and evening out textures. See, so right here, if you look, see how I backed off on it, and I can see there's like some weird texture going on here, and I don't really like it. So what I'm going to do is I'll just click it, bring this up a little, my brush size up a little bit, just kind of smooth that over, make it look a little bit better. It's probably too much, but there you go. Just get rid of these weird textures that are in here. So there. So I always start with that, and then what I do is I start to really clean up excuse me, the colors and the tones and things like that. So now I'm going to select my low frequency, which is just the color information. And with this, you use the brush tool, and that shortcut is B. So now I'm on the brush tool, and unfortunately the stamp and the brush tool look the same as on the screen, but just make sure you're on the brush tool, hit B. And then same thing, I'm going to affect, you really want to affect your brush size because you're going to be moving around a lot, because you want it to be the same size as the area that you want to smooth out. My big thing with some of this stuff is I'm looking for weird, like see how this is like a weird shadow here. I want that to smooth out a little bit up on his forehead. There's this is a nice, there's nice light here, and there's nice light here, and there's nice light here, but it's kind of ridgy. It's like, it's not smooth transition. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And the other thing I do with the color information is I tend to de-emphasize any deep wrinkles that have shown up because of the lighting. So here's one that's shown up because of lighting. His smile lines I might de-emphasize just a little. I don't want to get rid of things. I just want to de-emphasize them. So, because if I get rid of them, then they're going to look crazy. They're not going to look like human beings anymore. So I'm in my brush tool. Does anybody, actually, let's stop right there. Does anybody have any questions about the high frequency stuff that I went through? I don't see anything in the chat. All right.
I'm sorry. Is there
Yeah,
anything
Dana.
in the histogram that would help you with this?
In the histogram? No, not really. That's more of an exposure control. So I don't use it. So no, maybe somebody else has some information about it, but
No,
I
that's
don't
all I
use it.
wanted to know.
Yeah.
This is brand new because mine downloaded it yesterday.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the
It
histogram is
surprised me
just
this
basically
morning.
exposure. So yeah.
Surprised me this morning.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like my printer, but we'll figure that out.
It's always a journey. All right, so we'll move into the low frequency layer. So what I do is I get B. I usually like to have a low flow. So up here at the top is my flow. So remember I had it on 20 to 40. On this, I have it at 5. And a quick way to do that is to do a shift and then hit one of the numbers. See how it's moving? So to get 5 is shift 05. And then to get 100 is shift 0. And then to get 10 is shift 1. So then you can kind of, so I want 5, so I did shift 05. So now I'm at 5%. And what that does is we want gradual. We don't want crazy monster things. This is a very subtle technique. So, but what we'll start with is the thing that I kind of was aiming at for, is this gradation up on the forehead. I just want to smooth that out just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I have my brush. I'm going to make it a pretty big size, because like here's the size of this shadow, here's the size of this midtones, and here's the size of that highlight. So I have this brush about the size of those sections. There's no scientific reason. That's just the way I've done it, and it seems to be working. So what we want to do is we want to hold down Option, and that will give us our little dropper. And then you want to find the color that you want to even out. And I'm just going to hold Option, click once, and then start painting. And I'll go back and forth and this also evens out highlights like this. So see how I'm gonna be pretty close. I'm gonna pick in here. I'm just gonna paint this slowly down so it's just not as bright. But I'm using the actual color information that's on his forehead. So then we're gonna even this out. And then I'm gonna get some of this to even out a little bit because I don't like that. And it's going to be crazy because all of a sudden you don't see it happening as you're doing it. And that's why I like to stay big, because if I zoomed in, I'd lose what I was doing. You lose the context, I think. So that looks pretty nice. And then I come in and I'm going to do under his eyes, because I like to de-emphasize everybody has them, and I just like to de-emphasize them a little bit. So that's where I pick. I usually pick in a good spot nearby. Sometimes you got to really shrink to get into the actual wrinkle, because if you do it too big, you start to see how it kind of lightened up right there. And if you make a mistake, you just hit E, which is the eraser, and you just erase it right off there. Nope, well, not that. It's in the wrong eraser, isn't it? Oh no, my flow is super high on the eraser. So let's go back to my brush, hitting B. Come back here and just start evening this out. And then I'm going to even out this. So remember that it's going to, wherever I'm sampling is where it's taking from. So I want to sample some of the brighter stuff, because if I sample dark stuff, it'll darken this wrinkle right here. So I want to lighten it up. So I'm like getting in there and lightening it up just a little bit. I don't want to be crazy about it. I'm going to even out his nose a little bit. See, I don't like these weird shadows in here, and they're kind of discolored. So I'm actually just going to be evening that out. A little bit. Probably went a little too far on that, but then there's little splotches up here that I just want to even out. I'm just trying to take from samples that that's probably something I can go back into the high frequency layer and get rid of, because there's like a little something there that's going on. I don't know what that is. All right, so it basically looks like I've done nothing to this picture, but then what if I turn this off? Look at the difference. So here's without, here's after all the adjustments. And his skin just looks more even up here. It just looks smoother. It just looks much, whoops, that's the wrong way. But I haven't really changed it. I like this technique a lot better, because it still looks like skin. It still looks, but you've really smoothed it out. You've really evened it out. It looks really nice. And I'm going really subtle on this. So, and you like, so like I see little like kind of zits and acne and different things underneath here. So I'll go back into the high frequency, go back to my stamp, select some stuff, and just start getting rid of some different things that I'm noticing. Some of the freckles under there are really catching your eye. Some of these freckles. I don't want to change people, but I do want to make sure that I'm directing them to the places I want them to go to. And And like this little nose thing here, I just want that texture, but I don't want the freckle or whatever that was. There's some unevenness going on in here too. Oops, wrong one. There we go. So there's before, there's after. Before. Just see how it defines his nose now that I've gotten rid of those weird shadows on his nose and the discoloration. So I just really like this. Once you learn to do it, you get quicker and faster and more efficient at it. You know what you want to attack, and you know what things need work and what things don't. And especially with flyaways, man, the high frequency separation layers, and I mean, there's, it's super easy. All these I can get rid of in seconds. It's like, but it doesn't look like I'm doing anything. So like if you use the, I don't know if you've done any hair removal with the healing brush, but man, is it finicky, and sometimes it doesn't do what you want it to do. And this, I'm getting exactly what I want. So that's, I mean, you can even go in here and be like, see how this highlighted hair right there, it's really drawing your eye. I want that to be even. You can really make it do exactly what you want it to do. So before and after. So it's just a cleaner, and it doesn't look like I did anything to it. It's very, very natural looking to me. So any questions about that? Because I have other actions and other things that I do to a portrait at this point, and I have them all actions. So little process real quick is I've gone out and found actions that I like, and then I've tweaked them to do exactly what I want them to do. So like I have the dentist and the eye doctor. These are super old actions. I think I got them back in like 2009 or something, but I still really love these actions. So sometimes they affect each other, and you gotta learn what your actions do. But like, so I want to bring his eyes out because he has these really nice blue eyes. So I'm gonna do the eye doctor. It's gonna build a bunch of cool. So with this particular one, I always have to bring this underneath it because otherwise these won't show up. So I always bring my group down underneath my current stack. And then I really only do, I like to sharpen up people's eyes. So this is the same thing. This is a layer mask. So I hit B. I have white is my color, which is X. I can switch back and forth over here from white or black. So black conceals, white reveals. So I have a black mask. So I'm going to reveal stuff. So I'm going to zoom in on his eyes. I'm just going to give him a little sharpness in here, and then a little sharpness along. Yeah. Oh, my flow is really low. That's why. Wondered why it wasn't showing. I'm just going to go Shift 100. I'm going to go crazy so you can see. So see how it's sharpening up those lashes. I love having that. I love sharpening up the edges of not the middle of the eye, but the edges of the eye. And I'm going a little heavy-handed just so you can, it's hard to see, I know, on the, so what I'll do is I'll switch it off. So here's before, here's after. And see how his eyes just pop now with just a touch of sharpness on the eyes. And this is just an action you can really make pretty easily. And then I'm going to brighten the iris. So I'm going to go up here to my iris level. And I like having different layers just because I can come back. If that's too much of the sharpness, I can come here, select this layer, either go back in and erase some of the mask, or I can go up to the opacity of the mask and just drop it until it looks good. So there's 100. It still looks pretty good at 70 or 80. It's just not as strong, so I like that. So now I'm going to go back up to this, and then I'm going to bring out. So see how that's a little too much, but the nice thing is so I'm just looking where it was dark, but now I can still go in here and like brighten it up or darken it. by doing the opacity, or going back in and just selecting this, hitting X, and erasing the mask, or concealing the mask again. So there's many different options, but I just think like his eyes are, so see how you back off, you're like, oh crap, his eyes look like neon. So then you just back off the opacity until they look where you want them. So they're still popping, but they look a little normal there. So there's before, after, just a subtle change. And then I will do my dentist. Basically, the dentist is simply like adding blue to yellow teeth. So you're just adding a color layer, basically. You're coming in here, same thing, B. My brush tool is a B, and then I'm making sure that I'm on white is revealing, and I'm just gonna paint. He has pretty white teeth, so this is not coming through as much as somebody that has yellow teeth, but here is before and after. It's just really subtle in here because he has pretty nice teeth. But that's my process. Boom, there. Portrait done. So actions are a huge part of my process. Building your own, finding an action that you like, and then knowing how to break it down is always good. So I'm going up into the action palette, going to the hamburger over here, and then button mode's up here. And then if you turn off button mode, you can actually open it up and see every little thing that the action does. So then you can either record extra things that you need or actually take things out. You can just destroy pieces of it that you don't need. So actions are awesome. All right. Any questions about that? I'm going to leave this here because I'm going to do the neural filter next, and I'm going to put them like kind of side by side. Because yeah.
This is Dave. Let me interrupt you for a second. I mean, so we have all different levels of experience. I don't do a lot of portraiture, so I don't really use a lot of action. So you mentioned that, I mean, I noticed the frequency separation was an action. The eye doctor, the dentist were action. So somebody like me, just starting in on this, number one, where can I go to find actions? And then, or how do I build? And I don't want to, get into the whole, here's how you build an action. But I mean, frequency separation for you, you just started using action. Well, I don't have the action to start with.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going?
Yeah. So where I started with actions is I got into retouching later. The first thing I really used actions for, and this is where these come from, is that I was doing the same thing over and over again. So I liked to make, the way I wanted to make people's teeth whiter was to actually make a color layer. See how this is a color layer? And I just added blue. So I'm just going the opposite color spectrum of yellow and just adding a little blue to counteract it. But I would have to build that layer all the time. So what I did is actions is just a recording of a process, a step that you take. So one day I just decided to make an action of me building this layer. And then every time I hit the action, it would build that layer automatically. I wouldn't have to do anything else. I just have to hit that button. It sounds way more complicated than it actually is. So what you do is you kind of come up here into button mode and see how you have stop, record, and play. And that's how you kind of create an action, is you, let me see. I don't want to go too far into this, but you start a new action, you hit record, and then everything that I do, every pull down menu, every button, everything that I do touch is being recorded in the action. So like say I wanted to do right now is I want to do an adjustment layer for exposure. So it's recording that. See how it makes adjustment layered up here where it's recording, sorry, right here. So it just recorded what I did. And then I'm going to actually move it to the top and it's going to say move current layer. It just recorded everything I did. And then I'm going to select the RGB channel, because that's what I'm going to affect right here. And I'm going to lighten that. Okay. Whoops, that's too much. So it's only gonna record it when I let go of this. So we'll do there you go. So it recorded it, I think. Hold on, let me pull it down. This might not be working, but let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna stop, and then I'm going to actually erase that layer, dump it, and then go back into button mode. Man, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Let's everybody cross your fingers. And I hit that, boom, created the layer, created exposure, lighten the whole thing. That's where you really begin with actions, is really think about stuff that you do over and over again that's part of your process. If you sharpen a certain way, if you always use the same amount of sharpening, if you always like to add a bunch of contrast to your photographs, make an action. It's just like presets in Lightroom, exactly the same thing. So if you're doing something over and over again, make your life easier and make an action or a preset for it.
A lot easier than using Gene Smith's bleach brush.
Yes. Yep. And then you can actually, what was cool, so I'll go back to it, is see there's a mask on it. So I can actually, so white reveals, black conceals, I can select the mask, do Command I, which will invert it to black, and then I can hit B for my brush tool. And now I'll use a white brush to reveal the pieces that I want. So you have so much control over this now. And it's and you made an action for it. So you're bang, boom, you're in there, you're dodging and burning your landscape where you want to, because you've already made, it's like the luminosity mask thing that I was kind of did our last class on, is I'm making those automatically. So all I have to do is go in and paint where I want, just making my life easier. That looks crazy, but hey. There we go. Did that help? I think that was the direction you were going in, Dave.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for taking the time to allow me to detail your presentation for that little side trip.
Yeah, no
appreciate it.
problem. All right, so we're gonna leave this here. Actually, you know what? That looked a little bit better. It's not gonna let me go back. I did like it better, brighter, but we'll just leave it there. All right, so this is just another layer, same picture. With the neural filters, let me bring my notes back up because these are kind of important steps that I love with the neural filters. Again, a different way. It's Photoshop, you guys. I'm going to show you a different way. I always start with getting rid of the blemishes. So I'm just going to create another layer. And this is a whole, there's a million ways to do this. So I'm going to go to the healing brush. And this is just getting rid of blemishes, because the neural filter will not get rid of blemishes. It only deals with the color and the texture. That's all it deals with. So I'm going to go in and do the same thing with the healing brush. I think. What am I not on? Current and below. So that's another different thing, is that I want that to be on current and below. You don't want it on all layers, because it'll do everything, even top, above layer and below layer. So a way to, this is a different process, but another way that you can see where blemishes are is to go down to adjustment layer, make a black and white layer, and then drop, and never ever show your models this. They will freak out. So you drop the red, and then you can start to see, they look horrible. And but you can see where all the blemishes are. You can see where all his freckles are, because it's basically like showing all the redness on your face and where all the blotchy spots are. So this just makes it easier to see. And you just can turn it on and off, and and then get rid of the layer when you're done with it. So, but to work in it, you got to be on this layer. And that's also why you want it current and below, because if it's on all, it'll also sample the black and white layer also. And I don't want it to do that. So I'm just going to turn that off, but that's just an easy way to find more blemishes and really clean it up if you are nitpicky and really type A personality. So, so we're going to go back into his forehead, have my healing brush on. So this is the healing brush tool, not the spot healing. So the healing brush tool, I still have to select the spot that I'm sampling from, So Option, click, and then start brushing. You always want to kind of do it from both sides and fold it over, I think, just to make it look even. And see how the tool, this is the difference. I'm getting artifacts and repetitive artifacts, and that is a telltale sign of using the healing brush. So this is what we did over here with the other brush. See how it just de-emphasized it, but still has texture and stuff like that. And this, you can see the artifacts right here, and repetitive artifacts is always a telltale sign of Photoshop. So you always want to avoid that. And the healing brush tends to do that. So you got to be a little more like selective and creative of getting different things in there and getting different patterns. So you're always looking to break those patterns, because otherwise people will suss you out that you are Photoshopping stuff. See how I did another one? So I really do a little clicks, and I don't do long drags with this, because otherwise you start to get artifacts and it just looks fakey. So you've already seen me do this. I'm just going to get rid of his zit, and because we are going to do, oh, I think I forgot to make it a, nope. Okay. So I'm just going to get rid of this black and white filter. We're not using it. So these are the two layers I have. So then to use the neural filters, they're actually smart object capable. And what that means is that if I ever want to go back and change something, it will let me, like at any point in time. If I save it as a PSD, I can go back in and change the layer anytime I want to. If I did too much or too little, I can go back and change it. So what I do to really take advantage of that is I'll make I call it basically a compressed layer of everything I've done on top of all the other layers. I don't know the exact proper terminology of it, but I just compress everything to the top. I'm not getting rid of anything, or I'm not merging. I'm actually just compressing everything, these two layers together, into one layer on top. So, and to do that, I do Shift, Option, Command, E. So, and I'll do that. So it'll happen down here. So I'm going to erase it, and then I'm going to so it just pops a layer up there that's everything. It's not changing everything. You see me turn it on and off. It's not changing anything. It's just making another layer. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm doing a right click. I'm going up here, and I'm going to convert to Smart Object. And all that is doing is, oh, of course, my scratch discs are full. You darn you. We might skip that, but it's a good idea to do, because what I can do is, if this is a smart layer and I do the neural filter on it, I can always just double click on this layer, and the filter will pop right back up where it was at, and I can make adjustments, and it doesn't affect anything. I can just keep making. So if I add more and more layers to this and do different adjustments, like my teeth adjustment and my other adjustment, but I want to come back to the skin smoothness, I can just double click on that smart object layer and go right back and adjust it. So of course my scratch disk is full, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to skip that one. Hopefully the filter will work too. So, all right, so you pop open the neural filters. So here is our command chair for the filter. So see how Photoshop's already selected the face. It's already automatically doing that. So I'm going to pop on skin smoothing, which is right up here, and you got to turn it on, and it's automatically going to do it. So like, you can't even, like, that's amazing to me. So so just so you know what's going on, we already have the knowledge now. So blur is actually the texture layer. So if you see, I'm going to turn it to 0, all the texture is going to come back on, and then it's super smooth. It looks like wax. That looks crazy to me. So that's just too much. So what I do is I usually start at about 10 and see where I'm at, because I still want like actual skin texture. The further you go over this, the more it kind of evens out everything too much. So I usually keep it in the 10, 15 range. So that's looking pretty good right there. And then, so that's our texture layer. If you think of the blur as the texture layer in frequency separation, and then the smoothness is our low frequency layer. So that's our color. are evening out the colors. So if you go to -50, see it doesn't do much. And then if you start going up here, I think the best thing is up in here. See how it's really subtle, you guys, but like, remember how I was evening out his forehead, and it really evened it out. So here's 40, then I'll go back to 0. So you got to keep your eyes on it because it happens really subtly. But now it's kind of not as smoothed out. So I usually kind of am in the 20, 25 range in here. Each photo is different. So these are not like markers. These are places to start from, and then you just see how it looks. So, but amazingly, and it's so subtle that I'm gonna, it's a new layer because I don't have the smart filter on. So that looks pretty dang good. So we're gonna put them side by side here. Trying to remember how to do that. There we go. Where'd you go? I mean, can you see that? I mean, this is the one that I did with frequency separation, and this is the neural filter. So the neural filter took it a little too far, I think. He looks a little waxy. The nice thing is I can just back off on my settings, but it's doing a pretty dang good job. Like, it really smooths out that up here. So what this means to me is I'm going to make more money now because this is really, I can go really crazy with this. I didn't go quite as far as this one did, but like, this took me 10, 15 minutes and I can get it down to a 5 nowadays. This took me seconds and it's giving me the same quality that I really want. I mean, I'm going to have to go back and really adjust the numbers a little bit to get it back down so he looks like a regular person, because he looks a little waxy in here. He looks a little robotic. But the fact that, you know, I can get this far, it's just crazy to me. And then the nice thing about it is I think you can come in here and actually put let's see if it works. Yep. So you can do the whole brush it in, brush it off kind of thing. So I'm going to zoom in and I can just brush in the pieces that I want, that matter to me. And, you know, then we're going to get down to the fact that they look probably pretty similar now. So you still have a bit of control. It's just for the neural filter, you have to do that whole process of getting rid of the blemishes first, because I can't get rid of the blemishes. With frequency separation, I can just use the high frequency level to get rid of blemishes and flyaway hairs. I would have to go back in here with another tool to get rid of flyaway hairs. Like, I'd have to go use a healing brush or something like that. But they look pretty dang comparative, which, damn you, Photoshop, all that years of learning, and then you just did it in 2 seconds. But hey, but understanding that filter, I think you understand frequency separation a little bit. So that filter comes in handy for certain things, and then actual frequency separation comes in handy for certain things too. Just more control. Cool. All right. I'm going to stop sharing and take questions. All right. Anything anybody want to question about or see again or anything like that? Or know any of the other processes that I do?
Rick, I'll start. I am very impressed. I mean, it's helped you going through the frequency separation on the two, and then go into the neural filter. It made far more sense. So I'll have to. So thank you. I mean, a question that I'm curious about is, can the neural filter or frequency separation You use that to soften skin, but I mean, could I use that on other types of photographs? And I don't know whether they would be landscape. I don't know why I would want to, but I'm just thinking, well, here's an interesting new tool. Could I possibly use it?
Maybe I've only seen it used in portraiture. But
Okay.
I could see applications of it, like especially with textures. If you're working in water or something like that, and you really want it, I mean, you're manipulating. So if you're a landscape artist and you don't like manipulating, then this is probably not something you would want to try. But if you had water and you really wanted to even it out, you could use that texture layer to even out the textures, like pick the textures you want and even them out, and like a swirl, and to make it a little more perfect. If you had a swirl of water or something like that, anything with textures, I think you could really use it on.
Okay.
And evening out color. I don't know with landscape if you want to even out color. Maybe with a sunset or something like that. I've never seen it applied like that, but it's just ideas that are popping in my head.
Yeah.
But
Perhaps
yeah,
clouds.
yep, clouds.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a million other tools that you can use, but this is
Okay.
one way of doing it. So yeah.
All right.
Can you tell me, what was the original image made on?
What camera?
Size camera, what size sensor?
That was a D750,
Okay,
I believe.
all right.
And it's a full frame. It's a full frame.
Yeah, I'm curious about the pixelation, whether that would, if you got some pixelation, whether the neural filter would smooth that out.
Oh, that's a interesting. Yeah, I've never tried it, so I don't know. That would be interesting to try out.
I'm using a Sony RM4, A7 RM4, but I also have a 6600, which is awfully nice to walk around with. It's
right.
It's got everything in the whole world that it'll do that you don't want it to do, but,
yeah.
but that's okay. But it's a lower megapixel image, and if you're doing a landscape and you blow it up, you're going to see that pixelation. I'm just wondering if that would.
I think there's other tools out there that would help.
Yeah, just that this is a new tool.
Yeah, frequency separation. I don't. Yeah. I think the neural filter, I'm sure they're going to, you know what? I didn't even look, but I'm sure there was a beta of some other new, the Giga. We've all heard about that gigapixel thing. Well, they're doing a beta on it right now. So, yeah.
I just got to get my.
No, it's more than a beta. Photoshop and Lightroom now both have the super resolution.
Oh, really?
Which is equivalent to Topaz's gigapixel.
Yep.
Upsizing.
Did they just add it to Lightroom?
They just added like a day or two ago.
Oh wow! Okay.
In the last
version 10.3.
I've been taking care of a baby, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, Photoshop, they put it in, what was it, last month, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
And yeah, like the new Lightroom update that just came out has the new super resolution. In fact, when you start up Lightroom, it pops up a little message and says, "Hey, we added this, 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 and this."
Cool. And I'm sure they're not far behind on doing the what's the other one, the AI sharpening tool and the D-res, the D-noise tool. I'm sure they're not that far behind. So, I mean, those particular companies accelerated. Photoshop's been lagging, I think. This is they're finally doing something. So they've been lagging far behind some of these companies. So, but yeah.
I looked up that on Google, the dentist and the eye doctor.
Yeah.
Now $16.
Yeah, they're so old.
Yeah, I thought it was 40 when it came out, but it's 16 now.
They got to be over 10 years old.
That with the time you'd spend, it'd be worth doing it. You might as well use the action that's prepared. I
like having that control. I don't, because if you do sometimes the filter, it does the whole eye. I don't know. It's come a long way, let's just say, because you can still mask it off. You can still do all this. You know, you make another layer, make a mask, and then just paint it on. You're basically doing the same thing as the action. So it's just that action has, you know, I like it. It's part of my process. So but yes, they're old and probably very inexpensive at this point. So
Well, I can see that in street photography is very helpful.
Yeah.
If you got 4 or 5 people in a street photograph and 3 of them are in a partial shadow and you don't see any eye,
Yeah.
that would be a great place to use that.
yeah, it's that's the thing with Photoshop is, I mean, like when they asked me to do this frequency separate, and this, I think that was a year ago, Dave, wasn't it? It wasn't that long ago, maybe less than that. And frequency separation was the norm 6-7 months ago. It was the norm, and all of a sudden Photoshop changed the game, and also Luminar changed the game. They have a skin softening tool also that I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. So my everyday, like if you come in for a social media headshot here at my studio, which is an update headshot, it used to maybe take me 20 minutes for turnaround on a headshot with the speed that I work at. I can now turn around a headshot like that in 30 seconds practically now and get the same quality. So I've just increased my, how fast I can do things and how much money I make on those things. So I'm spending less time at this computer, which I hate this seat. I do not want to be here. I want to be taking photographs. So yeah, I'm looking for anything that can make time in this seat less. So yeah. And that, I think that's the cool thing is knowing the knowledge and then knowing how the new tool works, because they always change the names of it. You guys notice that? That drives me nuts. Why not just call it texture and color? Why blur and smoothness? I don't understand that, because it's basically frequency separation. That's what it is. And so it just drives me nuts that they change that stuff all the time. It's like clarity and texture and what's the vibrance and saturation. It's like, yeah, okay, cool.
Well,
Just call it what.
I print in photogravure. So when I finish with the image, it goes to transparency, and then from the transparency to the plate, and then from the plate through the press. So everything has to be done before that transparency is transferred to the plate. And of course, what's astonishing is there are 7 steps in making the image, and the sharpness stays with it. And anything that increases the sharpness is going to help me so that the final product looks like the original image and hasn't been degraded in between.
Yep. Yeah, it's all processes.
For me, it only takes 7 or 10 hours to make a print. So
hey,
understand your grief.
I'm still, I grew up in the darkroom, so I know we did CMYK color separations for
that's what I do. 4 layer CMYKs.
Yeah, we had to do that for back when newspapers were still black and white and they first started doing the front page of I had to learn how to do that in a darkroom in what was not built for it. So
yeah, well, that's what I do. And of course, then you have the registration problem. We won't
worry. And then also the registration problem of the printing press. So it's like, so you have this perfect transparency and then you stick it on the press and it fucks it up. It's like
when you see the first proof come off,
you're just, oh God. Yep. I hear your pain.
But I've had a bunch of shows, and so I'm not grieving about it. I'm just looking for ways to get a sharper image when I go to the plate.
Yep. Yeah, cool. All right, Dave. I think that's it. Anybody else have questions?
I don't see anything really in the chat, people have questions and people are somewhat silent, but I certainly appreciate your taking the time to teach us a little bit about frequency separation and now how this neural filter actually works. So
those neural filters are game changers. They're huge changers. They're going to change a lot of different things. They're crazy good. That, I don't know if you played with the Sky. I think we talked about that, the Sky replacement. Yep. That thing's insane. So
you're kind of telling me it's worth my $10 every month.
If you do a lot of Photoshop, yes. If you do a lot of landscape, I mean, do you want to swap skies? For me, it comes down to if I go, like I just went to Arches, and so I'm there. It's a crappy, it's a blue sky day, but it's not a gorgeous sky day, you know. It's like, but I've just spent so much money to be there on that day to shoot. Well, I can't sell anything with a blue sky. It's not, you know, sometimes it's just not as dynamic as some of the other stuff. So, and then on top of that, I'm competing with people that do use sky replacement
Sure.
generously, and I'm having to compete against that. So,
Got to get down on your knees and get low angles with
yeah, I mean, just create, yeah,
Colorado sky. We have that problem up here in Aspen. It's been the last week has been crystal clear.
Yep.
And the only thing interesting in the upper part of the picture is a little bit of snow that's left on the top of the mountains.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's just.
Yeah. And everybody's like, oh, it's a beautiful day. It's like, well, no, I want crazy days. I want something crazy.
I think in
So-
the last 25 years, I've had 2 days there was fog up here.
Yeah.
And you know, you get out and you just get so excited because the woods are in fog.
Yeah. It's anything different. I tell my wedding clients, it's going to rain on your wedding day. Awesome. Because it's different.
Nice guy.
It's something different. It's like, so yeah.
Well, with that, Erik, we'll bid you a good night. Again, thank you for sharing your processes with us, you know, for retouching. So it's very beneficial.
Just to plug, sorry, before we go, I
Absolutely,
am
please.
starting to do one-to-ones because of this wonderful piece of software that you do. If there's anybody out there, I know that we're at different levels. I teach beginners and people. I really believe in the exposure triangle. So if you're really looking to get a handle on your camera, like how to use it, what all the buttons and dials and all that stuff, and I know a lot of people are probably out of that thing, but I really love working with beginners to really teach them that, because I think that the foundation of photography is really super important. I run into photographers all the time that have been taking pictures for 5 years and have no idea what any of the settings are. So so that's really important to me. And then I just you know, if anybody needs somebody out on one of these landscape workshops that they're going to put a workshop on, I love teaching Lightroom processes and Photoshop processes. So I'm always looking for workshops to work on too. So
Let me
yeah,
ask you one other question. Do you print those headshots for people? And on what do you print them?
I mostly work in the web on websites and yeah, and a lot of social media branding stuff like that they use for content. I have done the last big print thing I did is brochures, so nothing huge.
Okay, and so it's not on a fine art paper or anything like that.
No, usually
or a glossy headshot.
no. I've done, even actors don't even do that anymore. It's like they're all digital. So yeah, printing in this era.
What am I going to tell you?
Yeah, printing in this era. I mean, I print them myself. I print them, you know, 20 by 30 on paper here, but
Don't tell me you haven't printed out baby pictures. Come on.
I haven't printed up.
You're kidding. You're going to show the
no,
baby. Take
not
the baby
yet.
to the computer, huh?
Yeah, it's all
Okay.
computerized right now. So it'll be printed soon. I believe in prints. I love prints. So yeah, we'll get there.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. There are, you know, Erik, there are several people. Sometimes some of the new members are a little bit curious of how they can improve their skills both in Lightroom and Photoshop. So this is helpful. So even though this is a pretty light attendance for us, this meeting, this is recorded, and hopefully some people will go back and take advantage of that. So
Yeah. And then you can stop and start too. That helps.
Yeah,
I know.
Very helpful. Thank you.
yeah. So thank you very much. You know, you were on the 2020 calendar. You're right now on the 2021 calendar, so we'll have to get you for 2022. So
There you go. Sure.
thank you.
I
very
can
much
teach
for
you
taking-
yet another thing that's going to be changed by Photoshop in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much,
We're
Erik.
going to bring the meeting to the end, but I would encourage people to actually go on the website, look at the information that Carl posts on the description for still life, and try your best to do a still life instead of having a picture of a baby or of a rock or something like that. I guess rocks would be still life, but you know what I'm saying. So take advantage of the information, guys. All right. Signing off, everybody. Adios.